There we are. Cata Parrish, welcome to the listening.
Hi.
And so where are you this evening, on this beautiful evening here? Where are you?
Okay. Yeah, I am in, God, I'm loath to give it a name actually. I'm in a room in my house, and the reason I'm loath to give it a name is because it's been all three of my kids' rooms, and it's now currently my grandson would say it was his room. So I don't want to say, I can't say whose room it is. It's the children's room, one of the children's rooms in the house, which makes it sound like I've got a very grand house, but I haven't. It's very small, and we've all kind of swapped rooms at different points to accommodate our different needs at different points. But my big kids have left home now, so it's just one child left at home, and a room that I get to mainly meditate in, or we store stuff in. And I'm on the edge of Aylsham, which is small country town in Norfolk.
Wow, yeah. And what an amazing day. We've had a few days now, haven't we?
Yeah, it's been really, really glorious. I managed to sneak an hour's lunch break. I didn't sneak it. I took an hour's lunch break. Took one of my dogs up to a friend's water meadow, and so beautiful. And the buzzards, I could hear the buzzards above me, and they've been there for ages and ages. Every time we go, we can see them just circling above. It's been gorgeous.
Yeah, they do this thing. There's something I noticed a few years ago here. Every autumn in September, it seems to be around the equinox, in the autumn and in the spring, they sort of gather like a social thing where all the buzzards from around come together. And it's happened a few times now here where they've, I've been looking up and seen a couple of buzzards circling, and then I sort of look a bit longer and notice, oh no, there's 3, 4, 5, and like up to like, I think the biggest number I ever had was 11.
No way.
And they're all, and they're, really high up, but all kind of circling together, and new ones arriving all the time. And the first time I saw it, I thought, well, that's amazing. I haven't seen anything like that before. So then I was kind of looking out for it, and that's when I realized there was this pattern of sort of at the start of the year, the sort of equinox being the beginning, say, and at the end they kind of gather together and do whatever buzzards do when they're floating on the thermals. But it was incredible to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think today and on Monday when Dave, my husband, and I were walking the dogs, and we were just watching them for ages, and just thinking, just feeling into that sensation of how it must be to be on the thermals just as the land heats up, and what that must feel like. Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, that's such a nice thing to do, isn't it? To sort of imagine into that. I often get that with swallows as well. They just seem to be having such a great time.
Yeah.
Nobody can convince me that they're not having.
Yeah, they're having fun. Yeah,
it's
why would
pleasure.
they? Yeah,
It's
totally.
the pleasure of doing something really well, and in their case, it's flying and just testing the limits of what's possible with flight.
Yeah, and sensing into it. They're all senses, aren't they? So, why would they not be just feeling amazing whilst they do it?
Yeah. And it's nice to sort of reach out as much as we can with our own senses into what that might be like. We often do that. It's like,
it's perfect, and it's really helpful for like when I went for a walk today, and there's a lot going on in my mind at the moment, like there is in lots of people's, and realize that I'm not really being very present. I'm just kind of thinking about who I need to phone next, and what I need to sort out, and then just remembering to come back to here. It's a really simple, you probably know it, meditation technique. Well, not even meditation, like a presence technique, which I used to teach to kids a lot, which is just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it's 5 things you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you just go through all your senses. It doesn't matter what order it's in. You just start with the easiest, and then go down, and it always never fails to bring you back to your immediate surroundings, because of course, even though it's obvious, nettles, celandine, buzzards, even though it's all obvious, it's just like it just brings your whole body back, and there's nothing more grounding or more helpful than that, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good. I haven't heard of that before. That's a good one.
Yeah,
maybe I'll certainly try it, and maybe introduce it to my kids as well.
yeah. Grace might know it.
Mate, she probably does. Yeah, introduce it to my kids. She'll be like, "What? Hang on,
Yeah, I know that, Dad. Yeah.
you mean you don't do that?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
although I did it also with my
Mm.
because I used to teach lots of children, I mean, and adults, but children tend to be much more receptive with these things. Because as adults we tend to think, oh, I know how to do that, I know that, I know what to do, I know how to do that, but not actually do it.
Well, you
Whereas,
just said it. You just said it right there. We tend to think.
yeah,
And we tend to just think everything.
yeah,
Think about how we feel, or this is the great challenge of our culture: is we've got so into our heads that you have to kind of make an effort.
yeah,
I think generally just to remind yourself, oh, I've got a body, I have a heart as well. There's this
yeah,
whole other or these other dimensions going on at the same time. And
yeah, which are at least as important, if not more important.
maybe more. I mean, I'm getting to the way of thinking that they are more important, and that a lot of what troubles us comes from being abstracted from, just what is, not being present to what's right in front of us in any given moment.
Yeah,
I'm in this thing at the moment where I'm constantly pulling myself out of the future, or and less often the past, but like bringing myself back to here, especially with the way the world is and all we've been through over the last few years. It's easy, and I think as a parent too, it's easy to just get to fall into that kind of, oh my god, what's going to happen, what can I do, how do
yeah, yeah, yeah,
trying
and
to
it's
work it out, but none of the answers are obviously in that place. In fact, that's the worst place to be, to try and do the best you can with what's going on. So,
yeah, and we don't when we have so little control over everything outside of our
yeah,
immediacy. So all we can do is the best that we can do with what's around us, with our family, with our gardens, with our woods, whatever it is. That's all we can do. And I know in some respects it doesn't feel enough, but when we actually do it, we can feel it is. We can feel that's all we can do. Yeah, it's enough. It has to be enough. What else is there?
yeah, what else is there? Yeah, and that's such an important point, and that's something that's been very at the forefront, really, for me, especially over lockdown. I think I started realizing, or had a lot of time to sort of think about, what are you going to do with the time you've got left, and what just looking at what I was doing and how I was living and how I was making a living, and just working out, is this what I really want to be doing? And I got to this place where, one, I realized just how fortunate I was to be living where I am, and all the kind of love and work that I've poured into the land here over the last almost 20 years now.
Yeah,
And realizing that's your life, and somehow kind of formalize that, and in doing, and really kind of going as deep as I can into that, somehow find a way to kind of share that or connect that with my community, with the wider world, in a way that works on many different levels. And really what I got down to was, I just want to grow plants.
yeah, that's
I
it.
just want
That's
to
it.
grow plants, and create a forest garden here. I mean, I've already been kind of doing it over this time anyway, but really kind of consciously do that now, and plant as many different plants and trees and shrubs as I can, encourage as much wildlife through different habitats, and really just put the soil at the very heart, take care of the soil, which will take care of everything else, and grow plants, sell plants to make a living, share that with other people so they can create gardens, or encourage that kind of connection again with the land, because I that's the feeling that's been ringing out for so long, is land connection with life,
Yeah,
is the only sane place to be now, because the human dimension has lost its mind, because it's going through a massive change or extinction. Who knows? It could be going really up or it could be disappearing. But whatever it's doing, life is still there, doing what life has always
Yeah.
done, and deepening that, and just creating life, or being, not directly, but playing my part to help life come into being, seems like the only worthy thing to do. So I
Yeah.
wonder, I guess I'm saying this because I'm wondering how has all that's been going on kind of filtered through to you, and has it made you reflect on what you're doing and what you want to do moving forward, and all of that?
I think, excuse me, I think I've done quite a bit of that before we opened Resource, and part of opening up. So just to summarize, the Resource General Store and Cafe is a place that my husband and I run in Norwich. It's a zero waste, ethical store, general store and cafe, and we run workshops and kind of community events and things from that. And when we decided to do that, it wasn't from a place of being desperate to be a shopkeeper. It was from a place of, well, what can I do with who I am and what I have? Like, let's do that. So so this seemed to be the natural. That seems to be the natural direction. Got really good business experience. I used to be a business advisor. My own in terms of my own personal lifestyle and practice. It's about loving the land, loving the earth, loving the all the elements, and so when I buy my food, or when I bought my food, it wasn't, when I was buying things in plastic, it wasn't that I felt necessarily like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that, this is sinful. It's just that I love the earth, and to buy something that will hurt the earth feels why would I do that? I love my husband. I wouldn't do something that would hurt him deliberately. So it's just like a natural cycle from that. So we opened the shop and we opened the cafe, and that's kind of what it is. And it's a zero waste cafe. It was a zero waste cafe. It's now not a zero waste cafe, but as much as it possibly can be. Are you still? Yeah. And that seems to be kind of the natural way of progression. Right now, I don't know that that's something that will. I don't know what will happen. But it all feels like a natural progression towards being of service to the rest of our kinship, whether that's land or trees or animals or humans, yeah.
So, and how was it received by the people of Norwich then when you started that? What was the reaction to it?
So when we first started, I made the mistake of looking at the comments underneath stuff, and then soon stopped. Excuse me. And then there were lots of people going, there were lots of kind of fairly negative trolling comments, but in the majority, there weren't lots, there were a few. The majority of people were really behind us, really supportive. We had really good press and EDP, Evening News, like radios. I'm quite good with social media, so we did lots, we had lots of support and a real kind of outpouring, which was great. Then another zero waste shop opened, which we knew was going to happen, and we felt that, well, ideally we want one of these shops to be on every street corner. We want this to be the way in which people shop. So I didn't feel, resentful or anything about that. I'm kind of excited about the possibility that Norwich could maybe hold all of this. And then, less than a year after we opened, the first lockdown happened. So we're now 3 years in, and it's been really tough. Obviously, like it has been for lots of people in different ways, and I just don't know. I just don't know what will happen every day. Literally today, on my Instagram, on my work Instagram feed, 2 shops have closed, 2 zero waste shops have closed in the UK. that I follow, and that's not even on my. So there's a little Facebook group for, you know, people who run zero waste shops. It's like a little support group. I've stopped looking at that because it's it's a bit too much at the moment, in terms of people are really struggling. So just on my kind of normal punters feed, two zero waste shops closed today. So it's tough, and I'm not sure I know what the answer is as to why this is happening.
So when I asked, I was thinking more, what was the response of the people in the neighbourhood to the shop? Like, were people using it? Was the kind of
Yeah, so we seem to be like people's local store, really, and that's really nice. That's kind of what we wanted. People kind of on their way into town, they'll come in, they'll drop their bags off, we'll fill them for them, they'll pick them up on the way back from work. Or all of our regulars have become friends because we're part of the community and they're part of our community, and we work together and we support each other. And they understand if I can't afford to buy stock in, they'll wait and get something and have something else instead. Which is just really generous and sweet and kind of them, and that's what communities do. We look out for each other. But I guess it's also a percentage which is not our community, and it's just kind of a larger community, and and we need that as well. And all businesses need that as well. And without that, it's tricky. Yeah.
So do you think, I mean, there's the obvious kind of, people are so trained now to just go to the supermarket, get everything. I guess you can't compete with the price either. I don't know.
Well, you think that.
Were you?
Yeah,
You were.
you think that. I mean, I can't compete with like Tesco value, or
no.
I don't know what the little equivalent is, but like for like.
Or the equivalent thing, yeah.
Yeah. So organic, if you're buying organic lentils or organic, or ethical cocoa or something like that, yeah, we can compete. But when we first opened, I used to really press that. But actually, I don't tend to say that so much anymore unless it comes up in conversation. Because most of our customers shop ethically because they want to shop ethically. And then when they come in, they go, "Oh my God, I can't believe it's as cheap as it is buying in the supermarket." Yeah. And I do say that, but there's no point in kind of just pushing that, because the supermarkets will always drive down prices.
Yeah.
And the point is that supermarkets don't look after communities. They just don't. Their bottom line, the most important thing to them is profit. Of course, that's what they're about. For an ethical business, profit is of course up there because it means that we can stay open. But it's not the main reason for being in existence. Otherwise, we'd run a business that doesn't have ethics at its heart. And there's something about, I don't know. I guess sometimes I'm surprised at other people's surprise that businesses like ours, ethical businesses, are struggling. And in some ways, of course, I'm not surprised, because everyone's just going about their own lives, and why would they be thinking about other businesses? But in other ways, it's kind of like I totally get that. In other ways, there's this element of reciprocation, like with our gardens, with plants, or with going out into the woodlands, or going out into various different places, and we can see where there's been this relationship between people and the land. Those places, there are these places that thrive because over years and years and years there's been this reciprocation with the land. And I kind of think of it like that, really. Like in our gardens, nettles and cleavers are great. We love nettles and cleavers, or some of us do. And certainly I don't want to speak badly of nettles. They've nursed me back to health on a number of occasions. But I don't want my whole garden to be full of nettles. And if I'm not intentional about how my garden grows, then they could take over and nothing else would grow. And whilst nettles are important, they're not so important that my vegetables and my herbs and my flowers shouldn't grow. And I feel the same. I'm just kind of stretching this imagery, really, but I feel the same about like supermarkets and small ethical businesses. Supermarkets have their place. If you've been at work all day and you hadn't managed to plan anything, and the kids are hungry, and you forgot to buy milk or whatever it is, great, yes, of course, and they're open until late because there's enough of them. They're not run by a family who need to go home and look after their kids. Yeah. But in general, we should be buying from small businesses. And I understand when I say that I understand what it's like to have not very much money, and I make choices about what I do with that money. And it's hard sometimes, and sometimes you can't make the choice to shop every time with somewhere small. But a lot of us can, a lot of the time. And if we choose to support our local communities will look after us. You know, in the past, when I've been to the market and I've had no money, because I've been to that market store many times, and I've got like £1 or £1.50 to spend, then that market stall holder has reached behind them and got me this food that they've kept aside for their customers, food that they can't sell, or is just going a little bit, and given that to me because I'm a regular, because they know. And we've done the same thing. We've got these vouchers. When someone comes in and they're struggling, we can help them because we've got these vouchers waiting for them. And that's what communities do for each other, and it's not what supermarkets do for each other. And I don't know how to communicate that any differently than I have been. Every 6 months or so I go on social media and say, hey, help. But I don't want to say it in a way that makes people feel guilty, because guilt doesn't drive behavior effectively. And it's not helpful, and I don't want people to feel guilty. I don't know how to communicate it any more effectively to help businesses like ours survive.
Yeah, because it's interesting. It's like we are at this crossroads now where we can either just be taken by the machine of profit that's sucking everything up and pulling us into that direction, which to me feels like a kind of anti-life energy. I don't know how else to describe it, because if I look at everything that's going on, that's most, if not everything, that's going on that's causing pain or destruction or harm can be basically traced back to the profit motive.
Yeah, to capitalism.
Corporate profit, corporate institutions, or the institutions of corporations are driving everything that way, and it's so anti-life. And it, no matter what we find out about the harm that plastics are doing, or that all those different things that everybody knows about, and they're sick of hearing about.
Yeah.
But nothing happens politically to move against it, because politics is broken in the I'm talking about in the West, in free countries, supposedly free countries. Politics is broken because it's so owned by the corporations now, and by the money, the banking.
No one or very few people believe in it anymore. And I understand that feeling of powerlessness, and therefore what's the point, and let's just do what we can do to live an easy life. I do get it.
No, but so what I'm saying is that's kind of one way, but then the other way is more human. And there's definitely, in my lifetime, I've seen, and it's been kind of my story as well, there has been the beginnings of a kind of rejection of that, and a move towards more humanity.
Yeah.
To things, to realizing that the food may be cheaper in a supermarket, but you lost something when the butcher, the baker, the greengrocer shut down. You lost community. You lost that interaction where you saw those people every few days. You bumped into people it, all of that changed. And I'm not sort of suggesting we should go back, because that's impossible, but acknowledging the value and the kind of the richness, the wealth of that for everybody, and that's been taken away. And I do wonder, like, how we can kind of find our way into that again. And maybe it's happening in different ways. Probably is, that I don't even know about, because I'm not 20 anymore, and I'm not on the pulse like that. But I just feel like we have everything we need. It's all so simple. Once you've had a proper relationship with a place, and you've understood that nature gives so much wealth all the time, every day, so much meaning, so much love, sustenance, materials, resources. and community is also like that. So much of what we need as humans, for our well-being comes from community.
Yeah.
And in my lifetime, community has been dismantled.
Yeah.
I think back even when I was a kid in Manchester, there was still some semblance of community then, but it over those years through the 80s and beyond, it's just gradually been dissolved really. And I wonder, and it could be that this is a necessary process, that everything did have to melt into its or dissolve into its constituent parts, which is us as individuals, before some new update can kind of coalesce and come back together. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it had to, but it has.
yeah,
I mean, I don't mean it didn't have to. I just mean I don't know. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know if it had to, but it has. And I do agree with you absolutely that there are communities springing up in different places, and yeah, no, I'm definitely well away from being young, but my young people, I think sometimes when you're in your early 20s, you're busy out there kind of chasing some dream, aren't you? And I don't know that my young people are feeling that same level of community that I'm feeling, and that you talked about. Certainly, I know that you've done a lot of work in pulling community together in the past, and as have I, and I've really benefited from that recently. I really feel that people are looking out for me. I don't know that they're looking out for me in the best way they can, and it doesn't necessarily mean that businesses can survive or the current setup will stay as it is, but things will evolve and change, and I have faith in that.
Yeah, I suppose be a sort of openness to being shown a new way, because this is something also that's been very present for me lately. After spending a life of just pushing stuff all the time, and often mostly against the tide,
Yeah.
in places like Norfolk where very few people were interested in what I was pushing. Um, I've got to this place now where I'm thinking, or there was a sort of switch happen where I thought, okay, you've done your yang period, now it's your yin period where you've just got to let it come.
Yeah.
Maybe just be open to seeing, very subtle things that want to appear, that appear in a very different way and don't need that kind of grow in space or silence rather than as a response to action or pushing.
Yeah.
Um, and I wonder if now I think, okay, you need to weave that in. You need to have a part of you that's just empty, that's noticing and looking for those signs, because it could be that I've got something useful that I could bring to something that's just starting up.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with my goal or dream or vision of the world, but maybe is really vital and very organic and natural. Because I think a lot of what I see, a lot of what I got wrong and a lot of what I see people getting wrong is they're trying to create natural processes artificially, like community. There's so many people talking about communities, eco community, conscious community, whatever, but they want to build a community, and community doesn't get built, it grows out of the ground. It's and takes millions of years or whatever to evolve. So that kind of in top down or kind of even bottom up planned thing, I just feel in my heart that's never going to work. All you're going to end up with is a lot of people like you, which to me sounds like hell. I don't know about you, but
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
hang on, somebody's knocking at my door.
Yeah.
Can
Go
I
see
pause
who
us
that
for a
is.
second?
Yeah, I'm excited to know who's at your door.
Yeah, so am I. Well, it wasn't that exciting. Well, it's kind of exciting for me personally. It was a bag of perlite being delivered.
All right, well, that's exciting. Yeah.
Woohoo! There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, just picking up on what you're saying, on a couple of things there. The thing that's come to my mind really is that pushing, and I think some of us who've got those kind of personalities. Sorry, I was just checking that I wasn't having a burning moment behind me, but I'm not. Some of us who had those kind of personalities, which were really all about, like, you know, fire, movement, action, let's create stuff, have done a lot of that. I'm just going to move this, and certainly for me, you know, I paid a really heavy price for that. I spend sometimes in a wheelchair because for lots of reasons really, but essentially because I spent a lifetime kind of pushing against stuff. And so I really hear that sense of having to lean into just listening, and sometimes I'm forced to, and it's really bloody hard, you know. It's really so this time last year, I was in a wheelchair for 3.5 months. I couldn't really walk very far at all, you know, like from room to room I could just about manage, and that was that. And it really forces you to listen up to stuff you don't want to even hear, because it's just boring, because it's just you in your room by yourself without anyone else. And a lot of fear, you know, about what does this mean this time? Am I going to get better this time? All of that. But it also makes you kind of really, I'm not saying anything profound, this is just what I'm thinking, what I remember. It makes me really think about, yeah, community and who is there, and that when I'm better, what do I want to do with this body that's better, you know? How do I want to be with it? What bits that I normally just take for granted do I not want to take for granted? And certainly the last time I did that, it just really made me think about my friendships, like who do I actually want in my life, you know, rather than just the people who are in my life. Who do I really want to spend time with? Who do I want? And then recently, also kind of coming off the back of that, on something you said earlier, like what now for me? What about me? What happens now? I've got, my youngest is 14 years old. She's going to be out of here in 4 years, I'd have thought, doing some exciting thing. I mean, obviously she's very welcome to stay, but I imagine she'll be wanting to move on. And I, that time feels like it goes really fast for me, because I've got a 25-year-old and a almost 23-year-old, and you know, what people say is true. It's like that. It's gone. Suddenly they're not here anymore. So yeah, I had this kind of experience over the weekend, where in a very long meditation, I guess, and then there was this question, well, what about me? And similarly, what came back to me was grow vegetables. Like, just grow, just reciprocate with the land, be with the land. Actually, what happened was, you know, love Dave, love your husband, which I do, and you know, find joy and make offerings to the land, and be in communication with the land. And that's kind of that seemed to be it. And I kind of thought there'd be more, like, no, the next thing you must do is this and this and this, because that's how it's always been, you know. Find this way to communicate this and support this thing, and champion this cause. And you know, none of that was there. It was just love the land, and love the people you love. It's quite simple, but almost too simple.
Well, I suppose it's a kind of passing on of the baton, isn't it? You know, because it isn't really our business to be pushing or doing in the world in that way if we're not younger in that sense. You know, that is the job of your children now. You know, as they leave home, they're beginning that process. So, you know, that I start to see the kind of the wisdom in that, just to, oh yeah, my role is shifting. It's, you know, it's time to.
But there's something, I think, sorry to interrupt you, Tim.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Sorry.
No,
There's something about remembering that kind of multi-generational approach is really valuable, and that some of what we know, some of the wisdom that we're gradually starting to piece together, in hand with someone's young eyes and someone else's quick-witted thinking, like all of that combined together is going to be the way forward. Multi-generational, multicultural, multi-species, like all of those things coming together. We need to be really intentional about that, because if we're not, then we can get these silos, can't we, of generations of people or types of people or whatever. So I think there is something about finding a way in which we can really listen to each other across generations. I mean, obviously across cultures and across all the wrongs that have been done, and the reparations that need to be made, but just like really listening to each other so that we can move forward.
So, and what is it about the land or growing or being in the garden? Can you kind of sort of talk about your actual experience? What's going on for you in your senses, and what is it about that seemed to be the answer, or was sort of calling to you? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time with plants, meditate with plants. I communicate with plants in that way, I guess. I listen to plants and trees. I feel into them, feel into their guidance. Just having my hands in the soil, just having my hands and my body, my face up against plants or up against trees, brings this huge peace for a start. Not like an overall, oh, everything's okay then peace, but just okay, let's just like reset. And then when that happens, these extremely stressful truths can be true at the same time as here I'm coming at them from a place of something much grander, rather than trying to resolve this crisis with my small mind. I can feel that my small mind is part of everything, is entangled with everything, is in kinship with everything, every being. And it's not the job of my small mind to find the solution or to make it better any more than I can do, any more than I can do in my own garden and help different plants to thrive and to listen to what they have to say, and to do the same with my own children and my own loved ones, and then share that knowledge where it's appropriate and learn from others where it's appropriate. So my practice is, I used to do a lot of yoga, used to teach yoga, practice a lot of yoga, and I have some complicated feelings about that. So my practice these days, just because it's not my culture, and it's it's something that's been taken and we've learned aspects of it and then packaged it up and sold it as a commodified thing to back to people whose culture it was, and there's white women yoga is everywhere, and I know how beneficial it is. This is not a slating of yoga teachers, but just a question around what are we doing, and is this the best way in which we can be doing it, I guess. Yeah. So my own practice is still lots of movements and lots of yoga-based movements, a lot of honouring of that, but it's mainly looking to the indigenous teachers that we have left, because most of them were, burnt or killed. So the teachers that we have left, the original teachers, were the plants and the trees. And so I sit with teas and sit with plants and meditate with them and go from there, really. I move with them, respond to whatever I'm feeling, and then go about my day based on that. Yeah.
Yeah, this sort of expansive thing that you allude to, or it sounds like when you're describing that, this thing of something much bigger than you. I think that's definitely at the heart of what I experience with nature and the land, is just this. It's a remembering that my body is like this limitless thing. I'm just a part of this landscape. I am the soil, and there's such a sort of peace in that. It's like exhaling or something, isn't it? It's like, it's like you
Yeah.
can put down all your bags. Ba-dum.
But that's exactly what it is, isn't it? Like,
Yeah,
breathe
yeah,
exhaling. That's what we're breathing
yeah,
in.
yeah,
But that's exactly what it is. It's a perfect description. Yeah.
yeah. And it's always there. Whenever I catch myself being stressed or worrying about something, or I just stop and go outside, whatever time of day or night, whatever the weather's doing. And immediately that sensory experience just changes everything, resets,
Yeah. I've got
puts a perspective on things. Like, that's just ideas in your head. There's a world going on all the time, and it's profound, it's mysterious, it's breathtakingly beautiful, it's always changing. And that's just here, in this immediate environment. There's all these things going on that you don't notice when you're on your screen. Or just yesterday I was walking around the garden in the afternoon, and I just out of the corner of my eye I saw a toad, or I heard it. No, that was it. I heard it first. I heard the sound of toads sort of calling out, and then I caught it out of the corner of my eye, and I was thinking, well, that's weird. That's the sound they make when they're in the pond, because they're all breeding in the pond at the moment. And then I looked a bit closer, and I noticed it was a male and a female were just kind of in a huddle on the grass, and they just looked like they were just laying in the sun, which was weird as well. It's like, well, surely they want to be somewhere a bit damper and cooler, but they were just lying on the grass in the sunshine, one on top of the other, probably sort of post-coital, or I don't know, but just like in love, or it was spring and isn't the world beautiful. And I got such an amazing feeling of love and wellness and relationship and all the kind of beauty of um, all the good things about being in a relationship or being in love with someone. And there it was, just two toads doing it. And this kind of stuff is going on all the time, all the time. And it's only when I'm in my head that I'm missing it. If I stop, even for 5 minutes, wherever I am outside, and just notice what's going on, there'll always be something that will kind of, well, not even that it's something that there has to be something, but
just
something
something
comes
getting it out of
over
your head.
me.
Yeah.
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 And it's so simple. And this is the thing, it's so simple. And it's like everything I've ever been trying to do is just to try and get to a place where I feel like this in this moment. And so why am I doing all that other stuff when it's right here in front of me? And all I had to do was connect back in with the land, with life.
Yeah, and we forget all the time, isn't it? And I guess is that human nature, just this constant forgetting and then coming back, and then
Mm-hmm.
forgetting and then coming back. And but that's just it. And our purpose is just to keep on remembering to go again, like come back again and come back again. When you talked about that initially, it made me think about when my daughter, who's my second child, was little. Every time she used to cry, I'm just really oversensitive to all sorts of things, and so noise being one of them. And every time she used to cry, I'd really struggle with the sense of that sound filling the house or filling the walls that I was in. So I didn't realize I was doing this, but I'd always would just go straight outside straight away. And then I felt okay. I could cope with her crying. I could hold it because it wasn't just me holding it. The garden was holding this sound. And then she would stop crying. And then I remember when she was a bit older, I remember her crying and then kind of going to the door, going, I need to get outside, and then realizing like we'd created this loop, and then just feeling like, oh my God, how brilliant that it was so unintentional. Like it wasn't a head thought, but my body knew, and now her body just knows, I'm upset, I need to be outside, because outside can hold it in a way that this bouncing off the walls can't hold it, Yeah.
Well,
And we know that. We know, like you're saying,
yeah.
we know that.
Our animal selves know it, right? It's
Yeah.
so simple. And that that's one of the most difficult things for me to come to terms with, is that is the case, and yet when we're abstracted away into our heads, we do so much harm to that huge kind of life that's holding us, and separate ourselves so much from it. And I feel like the biggest example, and for me this is a bit of a thing right now, is the biggest crisis we face at the moment is not any of the stuff we're hearing about in the news or on social media. It's what we're doing to the soil with
Yes.
our agricultural methods.
Yeah.
We are basically sterilizing and killing the soil and replacing that kind of incredible, complex, rich microbiome that's in there that helps all of life grow, with a few chemicals,
Yeah.
which are also toxic to us, it seems, now as they're feeding back through the food chain. And it's happening on such a scale now. And that, that's like a war on life. That's the thing that's outraging me, and kind of and breaking my heart, because it's so simple, the solution to that, just to stop and to rethink that, like, what are we doing here? What are we actually trying to achieve?
And it's so caught up in
Mm.
it's so caught up in this kind of colonialist thought about, like, oh yeah, we know the answers, here we come, we've got this new science, and we're going to not listen to anything that any of the people who've tended these lands for generations and generations know. We're just going to come in with this thing because this is what we do. And I just, yeah, I feel that same sense of like, how dare we, or not even us, but how dare this happen? How dare this happen while we don't listen to the people who've been tending these lands for so long, and who know how these lands work and the soils work. And we don't even know who we should ask here now, here in Norfolk. Like, who are our indigenous people? We can find them, we can trace them back, but so much of that knowledge has been lost because of these endless kind of colonial patterns over hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years, that we've lost this learning, which is why I go back to the plants, because that's
What that I was going to say, but I feel like, yeah, the human lineage might have broken, but the source is just the land. And anyone who's spent any time in any kind of prolonged connection with the land realizes, oh, the indigenous seed is just in me dormant. And if I connect into the land, it starts to wake up. And bits of that will come through me, and someone else will get another bit, and then
yeah.
it's
And
just experiencing what
yeah, and because we are that,
is
like
the
you were saying,
source
you've
of the
been there.
knowledge.
Yeah. Were you saying you've been there something like 20 years? Is that what you said earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you've been there something like 20 years. I've been here something like 15 years, and in Norfolk for different years. And like, what your body is made from those woods, and my body and my bones and my hair, and it's made from this land. So why would we not know if we listened? Why would we not know how to respond to that? Because it's who we are. It's what we breathe. It's what our bones are literally created from. We're in complete union all the time if we listen.
And I think the exciting thing is, for me, is to think, well, what can we have this incredible mind and imagination, and what incredible things could we create if we married that with this indigenous connection? Like instead of like some no, abandon everything that this whole way of life completely, and a sort of Luddite approach. I think no, take the best of that, but also preserve, or not preserve, but go and find out the knowledge that still exists in those little corners of the world before it disappears, but also find out from your own place where you're living
Yeah,
knowledge
bring all of that.
that's sleeping there. Mix it all together, and use that. Because for me, I have such a kind of, I really struggle with social media because in its current incarnation, it's the worst of the whole profit motive thing, and it's destroying us, our minds, our communities, and everything, and causing so much trouble. And yet, in there is that incredible resource of connection,
Yeah,
and if we can somehow survive this phase, which is like an old hangover of the old world trying to enforce itself on this new world, which already, thankfully is getting away from it. And there's all kinds of new things now springing up that are going beyond that kind of old model. Um, so that's encouraging. So I feel like, yeah, there's such power in that. If we can marry that with the land, with a kind of remembrance of connection with nature, that's how we're going to kind of survive and thrive and go beyond, and go to the next level as a species. I mean, that's where it seems to be for me. And I feel like my part in all of that, if it's anything, is just to be the steward for this bit of land,
yeah,
and kind of plug it into that digital network in some useful way, or not reject that, kind of cleverly negotiate that. I do
yeah.
think that landscape's changing because it got so bad, and sort of I've so many times I've just thought like I can't be in this space anymore. I can't be on Facebook, or not that I ever really was much. It was more of a broadcast place, but you know,
Yeah, I think that certainly we have to find ways in which we can navigate it safely for us and for other people. And actually, I'm really encouraged by the young people that are in my lives, have a much healthier relationship with social media than many people our kind of age. Roughly speaking, our age, Tim. I don't know how old you are, but that this kind of generation, and I recognise that, like for example, I've got two apprentices who work in the shop with us, and we're supporting their training and they're supporting our business. And to get hold of them is actually it's actually quite difficult because they don't do any of the channels. So there's one channel, they both do Instagram, that's it. But I can't get hold of them on WhatsApp, on Messenger, on and anything else, because they are really sensible about what what comes at them. And the same with my daughter and my son. And young friends that I have in Norwich, they're really careful about their social media use, and that I find that really encouraging. And we can listen to that wisdom because they've grown up with that and they know how to navigate it better than us, I think.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they see, they know what it is. They can see through it, and that these are the people who are building this more decentralized, private next
Yeah,
generation. That's really that.
but
I
me,
mean, those are the kind of dreams I had about the technology, was that it was going to liberate
yeah,
people, and make information free, and because that's what it wants. That's its natural desire and drive. I think if you look at it as a big living thing, it just wants to be free. It wants to kind of do that. And we sort of shackled it with these old ways of thinking, by sort of controlling it, and putting, mining data and farming people and all of that. They were just old ideas
yeah.
imposed. But
I guess where
it,
there's profit to be
yeah,
made.
but it's falling away. And I wonder if, I now think that maybe it's the beginning of the end. I mean, this is my hope. It is the beginning of the end of that kind of corporate machine, in the very technology that kind of was born out of it is now getting beyond it. And this decentralized sort of spontaneous network of collective intelligences, like moving at the speed of light, that you could never kind of control or stop, or is just starting to blossom. And you know, as long as the power's on.
Yeah, see, there we go. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I agree with that. And again, I mean that genuinely. I don't know
Yeah.
about that. I have some kind of instinctive cautiousness around something which can be bought and managed so easily. I guess is my response. But I also recognise that I really value being able to connect with people. You know, like I said, especially when I'm stuck in a room, and my community aren't my next door neighbours. Like, I've lovely next door neighbours, but you know that they're not my kind of everyday community. My everyday community are a little bit further and wider. But you know, maybe we do need to be thinking about what happens if in events where we don't have power, you know, like in Ukraine at the moment, when you know power's cut down, or in Russia where certain things are cut down, like with resources getting more scarce, these things all happen. And looking back at building communities of people next door to us, even if they're not like us,
Yeah.
you know, looking at how that works.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a need for that kind of putting energy into the local. I'm feeling
Yeah.
that in
Yeah. Even if everyone feels different.
in the physical layer,
Yeah.
in terms of people. And you know, again, it's that hybrid that excites me. It's that you have your kind of local physical community, and then it's enhanced by this global one. You know.
And there's all that value. I guess I just feel like the future's in localization, not globalization. And I definitely feel like the real value and benefit that comes for me from a more global world. But I don't know that that's. I think we need to be focusing intentionally on local systems, because the bigger things get, the more kind of systemic and systematic they get. And systems don't tend to look after people; they look after themselves. They look after the systems. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, that's where the breakthrough will be, because that's how it has been so far. But that's what I'm alluding to when I'm talking about these new things that are emerging, because they're not like that. They are
Okay.
global in their interconnection, but they're not big, clunky, world managing, you know, one world sort of
Yeah.
institutions. They're not, they're the opposite, in fact. They're it's more like they are local communities, but local is distributed all
Yeah.
over
So
the
rather than
planet.
geographically, locally, it's local.
So they have both qualities. They have the quality of localness and intimacy and knowing, but they also have this geographic distribution, and you know, can't be managed in the same way. You know, a population in one place can be controlled very easily. A
Yeah.
distributed population can't be. So all those old kind of power mechanisms, which we've
So,
lived with for thousands of years, I think.
so do you mean like I'm just trying to get behind what you're saying. So do you mean things like groups of people who have similar interests who come together across some platform, or do you mean like there's a platform, like different types of platforms? Yeah.
Yeah, kind of both. I mean, I've got the probably the best example is something like Bitcoin, which is has completely already disrupted like an age-old financial system. The financial system doesn't realize it yet, and it's still in control, but it's already been beaten by this thing, which will replace it as long as the power stays on, because it cannot be stopped as long as there's an internet. It can, and the you know, basically, if you think about what would be the most difficult thing to disrupt on Earth, it's probably the global financial system, which is, you know, must be the most powerful thing there is, right?
Yeah.
This thing has come along and done exactly that. And what's amazing about it is that, first of all, it was ridiculed, then it was vilified, then it was kind of like, oh, we can make some money out of this, so let's get in there and try and make some cash. And all the while, something else was going on underneath the surface, which wasn't driven by, personal financial gain. It was on a whole other level completely. And so when the financial system saw it, all it could see was, oh, these are people trying to make money. Because they couldn't see that there were people who genuinely wanted to do something on a whole other level, which was about freedom and personal sovereignty and privacy and, transcending states, banks, and all of that. And they were, committed and working away. So when the price went down, they're still working away. The price goes up, they're still working away. And it's basically now getting to a point where I think we're probably going to see in the next, we're reaching a kind of critical point. Either there's going to be a last attempt to bring it down by all the power structures of the world, or they're all going to invest in it quickly because they realize that this is the future. And so its ultimate defeat is that of that system is that they will like get into it, this thing that's actually going to replace them. And by getting into it, they will be killing off the old structure. So that's an example for me. And it's probably the most incredible thing that's happened in my lifetime, actually, in summary of all the things I've seen. And it's not yet so widely understood, I don't think, how radically new what's going on in that space is, because it does, for the first time since perhaps city-states were born, totally upend the old power structures. And I think what not only is it going to be, it's in finance, but it's going to do the same thing to government, to law, to all these different areas, even war and military. Like it may be that wars are completely different, or they're not even physical wars anymore, that they're somehow fought through cryptocurrencies. That's a big subject which would take a lot longer to explain, but it's disrupting everything.
Mm.
You know,
I don't.
I would
Yeah.
say to anyone who doesn't know anything about that whole space and has maybe just heard bits of things, in the corporate media, go and listen to some podcasts and some intelligent people talking about it, because it's fascinating what's being developed in that space.
Yeah.
If
I
you've
have.
ever wanted freedom or felt like you were somehow, your life was about keeping freedom alive on earth, or you should definitely have a look and check it out.
I've heard quite a few. I've heard quite a few people talk about Bitcoin, and it just doesn't interest me, Tim. Like, I try to stay interested. I'm interested in the people who are telling me about it. But what I'm interested in is something that's tangible, and maybe it's just that's just not my role. That's just not, someone else can do that. I have a just distrust of something which I have an innate distrust of something which is around power from elsewhere, and yet we live like that all the time, don't we? With all sorts of energy. Perhaps you don't, but lots of us live with gas that's piped in, or electricity that's coming.
Well, everybody does.
Yeah. So that's part of our culture. Well, not even, it's just part of our everyday lives. But I still, I don't like it. I don't trust it. It makes me feel. That's what makes me feel edgy. There's the prepper in me likes to make sure that as communities we can look after each other. So I don't mean that I can be self-sustaining or I can look after myself, but that as a community, we can look after each other.
Well, it's funny because I haven't obviously explained it. We haven't gone into detail, but the thing about Bitcoin, what it actually does is it gives you the power back that you've never had, because you were born into a world where other people had that power. This is what's so amazing about it, is it actually, what it's proposing and what it is doing, if in its implementation, is it makes you sovereign of your own money. And that's its potential anyway, if it kind of can be distributed in that way. And that's what's exciting, because
Right.
nobody, you will be fully in charge and control of that whole universe, rather than being subject to the whims of governments or treasuries or banks, or which we all are at the moment, as we're seeing our money now. Look how little your money is worth right now. It's debasing before your eyes. And things like that would be rendered impossible, basically.
Mm.
But anyway, that's a whole other thing, and it's not what you're interested in. Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't. It's not that. It's not that I am intentionally choosing to not be interested in. I just, as I get older, I find it easier to see what my mind's slipping away from. And sometimes my mind slips away from stuff I'm really interested in. Like no, I want, come on. I was thinking about this the other day before our book club. So at Resource we have a regular monthly book club, and I was trying to think, like, what's the opposite of the word? What's the opposite of magnetism? And it's like when you get two magnets and they just do that. And sometimes my brain does that now, when it used to be so sharp, and it doesn't do that anymore. It does that quite often now. And so what I realize is that it takes an awful lot of energy to make it kind of come out the direction that it needs to come out, for me to be able to hear that. A lot of kind of returning. And I, what I have learned is to be careful with my energy, because I don't always have it. So sometimes I just go, oh, do you know, maybe that's someone else's stuff, and great, you go do that, and I'm gonna not give my energy to that because I don't have so much of it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think, well, that it comes back to the sort of generational thing. It's not for me to do. I'm just kind of fascinated by what it's doing underneath, because I feel like we might see the end of states and countries through this kind of technology, and that's profound in what that could bring, in a positive way. Yeah. But I completely hear you about that. Just, I don't want to waste energy on anything that doesn't align now, and I won't. I just kind of, no. And it's a very physical signal, it's like,
and there are some things that I don't get, but I want to get. And so it's worth that. It's worth putting the energy in. And often that's when I'll ask my my kids, or if there's things I don't understand about the world now, and I'll ask them, and then my brain's going, but it's this. And then they're really good at finding ways to say, but maybe you haven't thought about this, or but but also this. And then I can kind of step out and get a broader picture, and because we can only come from our own experience, right? And so there's an idea. We can. I'm thinking at the moment. I'm thinking particularly about trends, and I'm thinking about like pronouns, and I'm thinking about the way in which my kids talk to me about the issues that lots of people are facing. And as someone who identifies as female, that's not my experience. I don't understand it, but I don't have to understand it I don't have. It doesn't have to be my experience to try and understand what's going on for people, and therefore it's important for me to kind of come at it and ask as many different people as I can, to kind of allow my brain to expand in those places, rather than give energy to stuff that I know my brain just doesn't work that effectively in those other areas. My brain works better when it tries to understand people rather than systems, I guess.
Ideas. Yeah, I kind of feel like one of the skills of getting older is realizing you're getting older. Avoiding the traps that you saw as a younger person in people who were kind of stuck in a way of thinking, or they weren't seeing what was. They were going off a story that they built up over the years, and they were just running that story, even though their surroundings might have changed. So it's a good kind of just to remember that, like, and listen. I do that a lot with my kids, where just listen to them, and because they're picking up signals that I'm not, because they're more sensitive. So
and their world is different. Their world is already so different from ours. But there's so much that we can, teach each other about. And whilst they might roll their eyes, like my youngest is rolling her eyes about, I'm looking at my phone, like, I just need to, and she'll just like take it from me. Oh God, let me just do it. But that's my eyesight, that's not my brain. That's my eyesight not being able to do it as fast as her. But equally, she'll be able, there are things that I can of course support her with, and I think as long as we can remember that and not just be constantly feeling like we know more or our experience has shown us this, and not also understand that their experience can show us something different. Like that's what keeps us able to move, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's a very interesting time in history because there are lots of different worlds happening all at the same time. Whereas, throughout most of human history, there was just one world that you all lived in,
Yeah.
that you kind of were introduced to, and you learned how it worked. But now, because of the shifts, and they happen so quickly between generations, there are all these different worlds existent at the same time. And people are living in totally different realities, and somehow we have to kind of make that work, and that could be just a function of of the rest of human history, or at least the next phase of it, if we survive. It may be that we've just broken through into a place where there are all these different worlds at once. It's just
Yeah.
another way of being now. So yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. And if we can find ways in which we can just hear each other and just be fascinated by how that works for each of us, so that when we kind of when we slip into these other spaces or slip into other worlds, that we know there are people around who can advise us as to how they've navigated those spaces, and then we can kind of come up with our own solutions. Yeah, that's a nice. Let's stick with that.
Great. Well, I think that's us, isn't it?
Yeah.